no one's seen, certainly in terms of the scenes between Christopher and myself. And what happened was when the movie was such an extraordinary hit, the producers, whose morals are in question in my book, for all sorts of complicated reasons, not the least of which was that they didn't want to pay the director the enormous sums of money they contractually were obligated to pay him because the first one made so much money, decided they would replace him and settle that little problem. A lot of that was shot by Dick Donner, and the exteriors, those quick intercuts, were shot by Lester. And I think Richard Lester, who's a wonderful director, was almost embarrassed to be making a cartoon with the sort of commitment of belief we had all put in the first one. So there's a different style. Every director has his own style. It's why people end up directing, different point of view. But you can see it in Superman 2. All the scenes with, for example, Gene Hackman were shot by Dick Donner. Half of the scenes at the Fortress of Solitude and Snow were Dick Donner scenes, intercut with a few shots from Richard Lester. So suddenly in came writers and they rewrote all of the scenes that Christopher and I had originally shot. For example, in the real ending, a brilliant scene which no one will ever see, unfortunately, instead of that silly nonsense where he sticks his hand in the fire and I go, "Oh, you didn't get burnt, you must be Superman." What originally happened, the scene I tested with and one that we shot, was that Christopher and I are at Niagara Falls, and there's a whole other lead into that that's not seen in this movie, and I notice, of course, that Clark's there when Superman isn't and the boy is saved, and what happens is he comes back and we go out on our date that evening in Niagara Falls, and I start saying, "Isn't it interesting that you weren't around when Clark was, or Superman was around?" And he went, "Oh, Lois, you've got to get off that kick. The last time you got on that, you nearly died trying to prove that I'm Superman. This is ridiculous." And I go, "Well, that was my problem. The last time I did it, I bet my life on it. This time I'm betting your life on it." And he looks at me and I pull out a gun. And Christopher goes, what, Lois, Lois, and I shoot it. And of course, because he's Superman, it bounces off him. And he goes, "Lois," and he pulls off his glasses, and this is the great moment, and I'm smiling at him, and he goes, "Lois, if you were wrong, you could have killed me." And I go, "With a blank?"
Bye-bye, baby. Superman!
I was very scared when I was put in the Niagara River. I had a large safety harness under my costume with a rope, and then there were several stuntmen behind a rock with their arms clasped in case I floated out to the Niagara River and down into the pit below where all the people die. And the whirlpool, and they had their arms clasped in case I, in fact, went through the rocks. And so in I go, you know, oh, I missed testosterone here, and strutted into the river, and my legs were swept out from under me, and I had literally no control. And that was one of the few times I was scared out of my wits. And trying to climb up to get to Christopher, to get out of the river to get to Christopher, was in fact even more difficult than it looks in the movie. I couldn't get my footing at all.
And you might be interested to know that Margot Kidder declined to attend the premiere of Superman 2. The reason? Personal politics. The screening was held at Reagan's White House. I'm Michelle Holden. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again for another edition of Trade Secrets.
Hi, I'm Jim Gallant for Encore. And next up is Where Eagles Dare, a splashy and spectacular World War II picture set high in the snowy Austrian Alps. Written by acclaimed novelist Alistair MacLean, Where Eagles Dare is the story of a crack group of Allied soldiers who parachute behind enemy lines to rescue a captured Allied officer from the hands of the Germans. There's just one hitch. The officer is being held prisoner in an impenetrable castle, a fortress which sits at the top of a mountain, accessible only by tiny cable cars which dangle over 1,000 feet in the air. And it is those cable cars which nearly steal the show. Where Eagles Dare features some of the most stunning stunt work ever filmed, including a fight sequence actually filmed atop one of the cable cars as it moves up towards the castle. buffeted by winds of over 60 miles an hour. Now, to shoot this sequence, director Brian Hutton called on the best in the business, a second unit director named Yakima Kanut, who had recently been presented with an Oscar for his 20 years of work capturing extraordinary stunt sequences, including the chariot race in Ben-Hur and the epic battle scenes in Spartacus. Cameras were rigged all around both cable cars, and the two cars moved in tandem up towards the castle, with the stuntmen fighting atop one car while the crew operated the cameras in the other. This was extremely risky, as the lack of camera angles forced the stuntmen to work without any lifelines throughout much of this breathtaking sequence. The centerpiece of the film, that foreboding castle perched high on a mountaintop, is not merely the figment of Hollywood imagination, but is an actual castle, built in 1077 by the Archbishop of Salzburg. Permission to film in and around the castle was almost revoked by the local citizens when they learned that the script called for the destruction of the castle. Well, it required considerable persuasion by producer Elliot Kastner to convince the locals that although there would be special effects and fire and explosions used during the film, the castle itself would not be harmed. Where Eagles Dare features a truly all-star cast, starring Richard Burton as the leader of the Commando Brigade and a young Clint Eastwood, fresh off his success in such films as Hang 'em High and Coogan's Bluff, as an American lieutenant assigned to this daring mission. Where Eagles Dare is a great action-packed movie. In fact, here at Encore, we'll be launching a new channel this fall that will air only action, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We'll be telling you more about it in the coming months. So stay tuned. Here's Where Eagles Dare. It's rated PG. The following feature is rated PG.